Okay, and 10:05, time to start. Welcome everyone to this presentation of the Sustainable Procurement Working Group from the REH. We are Joanna, please, next slide. Here's the agenda. So quick overview of the working group, what it's about, some definitions, and the working group current works, project objectives, what we're trying to do, and yes, and lastly, feedback and conclusion for any questions pending. Next, please. So we are Celine Heim, ACF, Sustainable Supply Chain Coordinator, and major contributor to this group. Joanna Broclin, reference for the REH, and she will introduce herself just after, and myself, Daniel, log advisor for TTH, small French organizations you may have not heard. Anyway, please, Joanna, your turn.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing us, Daniel, and thank you everyone for joining. Just a quick note, in case English is not your preferred language, if you want, and I'm sorry because I recognize some names, so I know that some people, it's not your first HNPW REH session, but just if you want to put on subtitles, you can go to the three little dots next to the camera icon, and you can activate the subtitles and change the language of the subtitles if English is not your preferred language. Just a quick note on the REH in case you don't know it. So the Humanitarian Environment Network, or Réseau Environnement Humanitaire, is a network of Francophone humanitarian and development workers and practitioners who are working together to reduce the environmental footprint of aid. The network has existed since 2012, and there was a restructuration in 2020, 2021. And we now have over 300 members, including more than 30 organizations. And all of those people are working together to also operationalize this topic. And so we have 4 working groups where the different members, who are usually would be thematic advisors or climate and environment officers or logisticians, for example, who are working together to discuss a specific topic. And we have 4 working groups. We have one on the carbon footprint, who's holding a session similar to this one tomorrow to discuss also what the working group is doing and what and how people might be interested in the working group. We have one on waste management, who had their session yesterday, one on environmental assessment and environmental screening, and they also had their session yesterday, and then the one that we have today, which is on sustainable procurement. And I'll pass it on over back to you, Daniel.
Thank you. Okay, so Sustainable Supply Working Group, basically that's a log. Group start as a meeting of connections of people, all working in the procurement field and willing to work on different this aspect of the procurement phase, which is basically having selection criteria, sustainable selection criteria. The group is now composed of all these NGOs. You can notice it's very much French-speaking NGOs, more or less. It relies a lot of people more than organization, let's say so. But anyway, all organizations are behind us in this work. Next, please. So we do have tie with different partners, the main one being the lab cluster, of course. We regularly continue our actions in the different REC coordination meetings on procurement. We're also part of the one consortium, but not direct implementing partners. Anyway, we have big ties with YOLO, the Humanitarian Cooperative, and they are implementing these criteria in the field in different countries where they have presence, basically. And we recently tied also a link with the IAPG regarding different action we would like to this.
So just before we start a little bit on, so that you get to know the working group better, we'd be interested to know you better. So just to know who's in the room. So we just have a quick Slido for you. You can join either by scanning the QR codes or going on slido.com and putting in the code, which is 3717427. And the first question that we have for you is that we're curious to know where you're joining us from. I'm currently in Paris, so that's where I would be joining from. And if you have any struggles accessing the Slido, you can also just put it in the chat. So we're seeing lots of francophones, but then also lots of different countries. Okay. Oops, sorry, I just cut it. But we'd also be interested to know what your role is, your position within your organization. Are you more a logistician, a program advisor, or are you more just related in general to programs? Are you an environment climate officer? And if it's other, I'd be curious to know. You can just put it in the chat. It's just so that we kind of understand who is in the room. Oops, sorry. Okay, so it's kind of a battle between environment climate officers and logisticians. And then finally, we'd like to, oh my God, sorry, my mouse is very sensitive today. We'd be interested to know how we would judge your level of experience with regards to sustainable procurement. Is that something that you are eager to discover and you're brand new to the topic? Is it something that you have already tried out and have some experience with? And are you actually an expert on the matter and you'll be able to give us lots of feedback during the session? Okay, so it's kind of half and half, and I'm gonna pass it on to Celine so that she can kind of take it from the start and just put the grounds with a few definitions before we get into the nitty-gritty of things.
Thank you, Joanna. So here we go. The main idea of the sustainable procurement is the integration of the sustainable development in all procurement. So it means integrating the social factors and the environmental factor plus the common and current economic factor for procurement. For example, in environmental aspect, it will be looking for sustainable use of resource, protect nature, environment, and ecosystem, but as well preventing emission of harmful gas emission or negative impact on the environment, like pollution, contamination, water consumption, and so on. Other elements, for example, on social factor, will be to generate respect, social equity, fair and equitable, like living condition for men, women, workers, looking about social practice, like respecting at least the minimum standards, having guarantee equality and inclusion, respect of human rights, gender, anti-discrimination, anti-racist, and so on. So that are a few elements that we really want to integrate and improve in our supply chain. Thank you. You can move ahead. So a little difference that is good to highlight between green procurement and sustainable procurement. So green procurement is really emphasis on the environmental responsibility in our procurement decision. We want to decrease the environmental impact of goods and services that we are procuring in terms of reducing energy consumption, waste generation, or even if the global view on the life cycle and the carbon emission. Yeah. What is a little bit different with sustainable procurement, which is having this aspect of green procurement, but plus the environmental aspect and economic and good governance. Okay, so it's more a global approach, the sustainable procurement. Here we go, we can move on. Here, just to highlight the channel of a procurement. So this diagram is come from the REH group. So here we can highlight that the sustainable procurement is really starting in the need definition, where we look for alternatives such as reducing, reusing, or recycling. Then we write as a specific requirement integrating criteria on environmental and social aspects. Then we realize the identification of the supplier, looking for the ones having the best sustainable practice. Then there is the analysis phase of the bid, proposition, and selection of the supplier. So of course, in the grid analysis, such a criteria need to be integrated and evaluate. Then we go to the awards of the contract. Here there is some opportunity of integrating some clause, like on the turnback material for the recycling parts. It can be as well highlighting the quality and the sustainability and so on. Have to be really adapted to the context and the goods and services. Next, we go on the reception phase, ensuring that the criteria are met and payment. And next, last but not least, the evaluation of review. It's mean how we work with our supplier to request them improvement on their sustainability performance. Here we go. So here it's a little refresh about the full process of procurement where we can highlight the sustainable procurement steps. Yeah, here we go. We can move on. Here a little refresh about what are the big impact on climate change, energy, that we need to use efficient and renewable energy, water as a key resource, looking for mitigation on water pollution or reuse system. Waste, it's a big topic, so it's really making the links with the technical specification. So here we'll try to decrease as much as possible the transfer of the waste to landfill, but more looking about opportunity for recycling. So it's really this idea of circular economy. Another point is toxic substance that we want to decrease as much as possible in the technical specification. Economic benefits, so it's really looking about a win-win relation with our supplier, but as well looking about the cost that sometimes we can reduce, as well looking about more natural based solution, by example, or more local solution up to the quality, of course. Here we go, social responsibility and ethical practice. Of course, looking about good practice, working condition, as we mentioned before, diversity and positive gender approach, and as well positive impact on local communities. And the last one, which is resource use and intensity. Looking about the raw material use, the renewability of resource, and so on. Such a criteria can be applied for goods and services, but as well on So if we look about the goods, we will look especially about all the phases of the life cycle of the product. So what can be the opportunity from the resource manufacturing phase, use, and end of life during the consummation, what will be the consummation energy, water, fuel consummation, consumable, and so on. We want to look as well for equipment that are repairable and be able to extend the lifetime. And last but not least, of course, working on the end of life and disposable option of the product. So that's why we look for biodegradable, compostable, or recyclable products. On services, it's a little bit more complex, but here we can more emphasis on the social aspect, for example, working condition, living wage, forced labor, impact on local community are very good option to be looked at. And sometimes when the services is as well including materials like for training or even if like doing like, for example, drilling services, looking about what are the products used in the services, applying the same concepts that for our supply goods. Yeah, hoping that it's giving you a bit more information of the concept. We can move on here a little zoom on the links between sustainable procurement and climate change. Okay, it's if we look at the global carbon footprint emission of a majority of NGO, we can see that the procurement is relative to 50 to 70% of the global carbon footprint of the NGO and the humanitarian sector. There is two elements that we can divide. First of all is looking about the carbon emission of the products. So it's looking in detail about what is the life cycle of the product and making the relation with the carbon footprint of the products. So of course, looking about some example like renewable energy, solar panel, wind turbine, transportation, example, electric vehicle, building material, certified wood or eco-friendly insulation, and food products like organic food, local, seasonable products, vegetarian and alternative like for catering. Okay, all these products, by example, are decarbonized products. They produce less emission than others. So it's definitively this target that we wish to raise. And at the other hand, at the right side, you can see the carbon footprint reduction through the supplier selection. So here we are gonna to look for supplier having a reduction of greenhouse gas emission plan here, especially for big supplier, but having as well good practice in place or strategy about mitigation in place that they have relative to their activity. So it's under what we call the scope 3, which is not directly under our link, but it will really depend how we select our supplier based on this approach as well. So yeah, hoping that it's giving you a little bit more clarity on the topic. And here we go. I hand over to Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So with this principle in mind, we did start different aspects. The first one will be SPCD. We're going through that, but we also gathered at the beginning of the year to try to decide which project we would like to seek and to explore in terms to improve this green procurement, or at least the sustainable procurement aspect of our. So, as mentioned, our shining star, the Sustainable Criteria Database, the Sustainable Procurement Database. This is a tool which has been released 2 years ago, if I'm right. We had different sessions last year and before to describe it, etc. We did integrate feedbacks, and we are still updating it. We're going to go a bit more on the details on how it works just after. But we still want to we wanted to keep on this tool, to update it, of course, and to try to work on the ergonomics aspect of the tool. At the moment, it's an Excel database. Maybe we could have a more user-friendly aspect of it. So that's the main way we want to work on during 2025. We did start to explore supplier checklists with ESG criteria. Basically, when you're doing your supplier checklist, mostly, but you always include like governance, law, registration, this kind of stuff. Why not having also some kind of green or sustainable criteria on that? This project is currently under pilot phase. Basically, we are trying to see how it's going in the field. So no presentation yet, but probably release of the tools during 2025. You'll be aware. On the technical part also, we'll try to integrate this sustainable procurement as contract clauses in the procurement contract, service goods, etc. How can we translate this specific aspect as legally binding articles? It's a bit technical. There's no lawyer between us, so we're starting to see what we can do on that. We're probably going to need some help at some point, but for the moment, that's still the project, and we'll see what's coming up. Céline will speak of that a bit later on. Finally, 2 more social projects. We like firstly to link the people working on this kind of aspect in the field between the organizations, part of the working group, to liaise, to share good practices, to share also their database eventually on suppliers, or at least to help identify the good practice you can find in each context. So that's one of the projects. The other one being this sharing of the validated suppliers, validated sustainable suppliers between different organizations. This is probably going to take a bit more time and will need more high-level integration between organizations. But yeah, we try to do our best on that. So we're going to see a bit more details on the SPCD. SPCD being held for Sustainable Procurement Criteria Database. We should have probably worked on the name a bit more, to be honest. Maybe if we will rename or rebrand one day, we'll see. Anyway, the objective of this database was to define these criteria on not only on environmental criteria, but also social and governance, as described by Céline. And we wanted to have like to share it with the largest possible users. So it's generally not, it's by design not done for a certain type of procurement. It's done for all of them, which makes quite a lot of the database. So from the procurement deep down in the jungle in car or HQ, big call for tenders. The idea is still the same behind it. You you could use it at some point. Okay, and that was important also for the kind of template we're using, because Excel files, you can upload it, you can change it, you can adapt it to your needs, you can add stuff if you want to. So the idea is really to have it free of use, free of usage, so everybody can adopt it. Next, please. In this database, you will find basically 3 different criteria, 3 different phases. That's a 3-step tools. The first one is how to put criteria on the suppliers itself, and that's a bit linked to the pre-qualifications tools we're not going to talk about today, but still, what is applicable to all suppliers, whatever the size, etc. So you have some example here. Do they have strategy? Do they produce locally? Do they have any kind of sustainable development approach? Whatever. Okay. The first one is very much on all products and goods. General criteria which you can more or less always apply. That's for the localization of the production, that's for packaging, that's for any kind of labeling. They have some. This is basically that's the main stuff you could apply to all procurement you have. And finally, the third step is on specific purchasing category. This one is more specific to certain sectors. They are listed here, okay, between products and services. Basically, it's very much support oriented because we are logists, sorry. But we would love to have more programmatic sectors like wash or any kind of, I mean, drugs are always going to be tricky, but any kind of other field where we could apply some specific selection criteria based on this ESG. Next, please. So the principle basically is to, for the moment, how to use it is to download the tool, filter out what the criteria you're seeking. It's actually in 3 languages. It's English, French, and Spanish. And this criteria should go to your quotation form, quotation request form for the supplier to fill. Okay. And this criteria should find itself also in the supplier bid analysis. I don't know what your evaluation grid, whatever you call it, in your own organization. So really much copy paste from the tool to the quotations to the evaluation grid. Next, please. Okay. What we expect of it, of this project, particularly, we expect this chain of practice. Sure. As mentioned, we're trying to target as much people as possible, field-based, HQ-based, in-between-based, whatever, coordinations, capitals, regions. So the tools has to be kept simple and adaptive to each level of procurement. We also really push for having a free access to the tool, basically to having a largest diffusion as possible. Again, the idea is not to brand this as this workshop tools, etc. The idea is very much to push for the change of practices, to integrate that basically every time you're asking for ESG criteria to suppliers, if you're only the one organization doing it, you may not be heard, except if you're very huge. But if there's plenty of organization asking for the same criteria all over the market, maybe some of them will realize they could have something to gain and then they will change their practice as well. That would be for packaging, that would be for producing anything which can be linked to this effort to reduce our footprint. Okay. And that is a living tool where basically we're trying to integrate more criteria, we're trying to review the farm every then and now. We are trying to and we try to integrate new market as well. So basically, it's a still living tool. So there is new version coming up. There's a new version coming up, I believe, soon. I don't know. Maybe you would tell us. I mean, this summer, I believe. Yes, this summer, inshallah. And yes, and we will need feedback for that. Okay, so on the REH page, you will find. We'll come back later to feedbacks anyway. Please next. So the challenges. The main challenge, basically the main feedback we had, one of the main feedback we had, is basically that as we try to have the widest tools, the widest criteria possible, we try to have the widest field of operation, which make it maybe complicate for some usage and not applicable. I mean, of course, if you're asking for an eco label to suppliers in Bambari, you may ask long, may not find some. But if you just ask them if they produce locally or not, oh, maybe it's something they can answer. Okay, so these filters and this choice of criteria may very much vary from one field to the other. And we may be lacking of some criteria on some specific aspect, very immature market, very remote area, maybe the size of the market is also quite decisive on this one. So yeah, but the operational phase of it's a challenge. We also struggling. That's the main aspect that's why we are more focusing on support, because there's no standard there. But basically, the standard is very changing from one organization to the other, and especially on the programmatic side. And we cannot apply the same criteria for both for all of you. We're also lacking quite a lot of technical inputs. Even if we do speak within our own organizations, we are struggling to get involvement in this project on the programmatic part. If you have any willing participant to update us with specific market, please tell us. Technical validation by standard for standard piece of the clusters. Clusters are changing the standards regularly, and there's no shared basis for all of them. And whenever you would like to buy kits, it's always a bit struggle to get the cluster involvement in it. I mean, validation at least. Okay, and finally, the change of practice, the buy-in, the point that everybody's struggling with. Basically, every time you're trying to implement something new in the field, especially on this kind of criteria, as mentioned, the guys say, oh, no, we don't do that here. And so they don't integrate that, and it's never changed. It's not so true. I mean, in my organizations, I know that last year in Ukraine, we start using this selection criteria, a very standard one. To begin with, the results were very much the same for everyone. Basically, none were understanding these questions and not fill it, or they all fill the same information. But after a year, it has been buy-in by the team. So they explained to the suppliers, and they had some difference between the different suppliers, and that it could make a difference, a slight difference, sure, but it could make a difference between in the selection of the of suppliers. So it's always this change of practice, which is very important, and we need to repeat, and we need to insist, and yeah, feedback are coming, and it's quite positive. Thank you.
Thank
So
you,
back
Daniel.
to the.
Yeah, thank you.
Back
We
to you.
have lots of we have lots of questions coming in the chat, and we do want to take the time to answer them. So if I can, I'm just going to go quickly on this, and Celine, if you can just go quickly on the next part. Sorry, just because we have lots of questions in the chat. They're quite interesting. But this is just so you know, if you click on the link, you can download the tool here. It's already in French, English, and Spanish. You have all of it in the Excel version. And then, as Daniel has mentioned, we're very keen to receive your feedback. And we have some our surveys which you can fill to give your feedback, or you can email the working group as well. We'll give you the emails. The working group has also made tutorial videos, very short ones, that are also available in English, French, and Spanish. And if you want to know more, we also held introduction workshops. So there's lots of additional information on this specific tool. And I'll pass it on over. Yeah, we need your feedback. Oop. I'll pass it on over to Celine. I might just skip that question just so that for the sake of time, sorry. So I'll pass them over to you, Celine.
Here we go. Some example of contract clause that can be looked at. Example for goods contract, looking about the reverse logistic opportunity. So as you know already, after sales services is something like pretty regular that we have in our contract, but we can go further, requesting our supplier if he has any partnership with recycler. So we could give them back the waste after the consumption of the product, or for the end of life management of the equipment. About services, some example like requesting a low carbon travel plan to consultants, or requesting them if they have any travel policy in place to ensure that it's optimized, or it can be really adapted to the services as well. If there is any events, requesting zero waste catering, or as well vegetarian food proposition and so on. Of course, avoiding any single-use plastic like the bottle plastic. Having this specification for them to work on it. And yeah, last one about works and construction contract. Waste management plan is very a big topics, but as well the resource use and the type of organization. By example, for drilling, requesting the waste management of the used hydraulic oil, which is a topic in the drilling. So of course, each time it have to be adapted to the context, and of course it have to be integrated in the term of reference for the supplier to adapt and make like a good proposition on it. And here we go. Thank you. So it's a little topic. It's a project that we will start this year from the working group, looking about our clause of contract, benchmarking between each other, and having a list of improvements. And that makes the links with our tool, the Sustainable Procurement Criteria database. Thank you. Now here we go in terms of conclusion. So for the sustainable procurement, it's really a change of the sector, and we need to change together of way of working, because together we have more power of negotiation, and we can even if procure together. And here I make the links with the Hulo cooperative, logistic cooperative, that is realizing a joint procurement integrating such sustainable criteria that we work together these topics. It's a continual improvement, so thank you a lot as well for your feedback on the tool. If you are using it, we will really appreciate to build on the previous feedback that you already received for continual improvement. And here we go. We look as well the donor support in this new way of working by accepting a fair price and fair cost of our more sustainable procurement. Thank you. If you have any question, happy to answer.
There's lots of questions in the chat. I can read out the first ones and I'll let Daniel and Celine answer. But the first question was for Marianne, asking, how do you see the SPCD tool interacting with humanitarian procurement centers?
It's quite a good question indeed. I mean, we don't have any direct contact with the HPC so far. I believe they have their own sustainable policy going on, but so far we don't have any direct contact. But they're free to use it if they want to inspire it. Again, the target is to decrease our carbon footprint, whatever that means. So far we don't have any contact. If they want to reach out for us, all they're welcome.
Thank you. We also then had a question, which Celine, you kind of started to answer in the chat, but from patients asking how applicable are the aspects of the criteria in operational environments with, for example, less mature markets?
Yeah, it's a very good topic because this approach of sustainable procurement is not putting aside the small supplier. Actually, it's part of the social and economic as well target to improve the local procurement and procure local production. But just our technical specification need to be adapted to the context, and as well the supplier criteria of selection on environment, social and good governance need to be adapted about the level. Working with small suppliers and local suppliers, for example, in remote location, is taking a little bit more time to bring them on board, as when we need to secure a certain amount of order for them to invest in their, for example, new sourcing. Okay, so it have to be well think. We need to dedicate time to supplier visit. We need to engage themselves in this way of working. And by example, having supplier meeting and explaining our way of working, explaining what we look for, especially by example, explaining, okay, reverse logistic, what is this? And let them make a proposition up to their capacity. So really we want, I mean, the approach of our working group, we want to work with a local supplier, and criteria need to be adapted. And especially actually in the SPCD tool, we sectorize our specification between a very important, like it can be used in all contexts normally, like highly recommend that can be used, for example, in capital context where you have much bigger supplier, and a third category, which is optional, is really for, for example, international procurement or procurement from the HQ procurement in Europe, where we can be much more, we can target much higher level in sustainability and performance. Yeah, hoping I answer well to your question. And move on to the next. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a bit addition of that, please. Just consider all Euro country, basically, where Euro is deployed every time they're doing like a joint procurement initiative. they're using this ESG criteria also. So it's been deployed, it's been used. It's been tested at least.
So that kind of answers
in
the following.
Burkina, Congo, these kind of countries, so quite less mature.
So yeah, that was the next question. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, this is patient. So I asked the question. So we sort of piloted this to some extent. And what we found was without government regulations sort of incentivizing suppliers to sort of start looking at those three, have a holistic look at how we can reduce the footprint. It's almost impossible. And also you end up having to work with suppliers that are not necessarily localized when we're trying to promote local economies. You end up having to use to go to suppliers that are not necessarily that are higher level, and then we drop the smaller suppliers when we are trying to promote them to be able to also be able to participate in the market without being restricted. I mean, I guess these will vary by context, but also, like you already mentioned, you cannot ask them if they actually manufacture. They are a distributor in most of them are distributors, and most of the products that they sell, they actually travel for so long, which increases already again the carbon footprint. So I think there's more work to be done here to make sure that the tool is robust enough to make sure that we don't drop some of the aspects that we've been trying to promote, like really make sure those local suppliers are participating in the market fairly. I mean, it's great to start to doing a general feel of how the environment is, but the customization is important, and the government participation is also important. I just wanted to highlight that, but great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Patient. And yes, indeed, it's there will be some BS on that, of course. And yes, it needs to be contextualized, it needs to be adapted. Of course, what do you want to focus on, like local productions or having eco label? What is your main point? It's up to you to choose, basically. If you want to focus on the small suppliers, of course you should like select the criteria which fits these local suppliers, which will be, I don't know, woman part of the workforce, any other local community contributions. These kind of criteria are also be found in this database. But yes, thank you for the feedback, Passion.
Thank you. The question after was on whether the tool was tested, so you kind of already started to answer this, and if it was piloted. So there, and at least added some more specifications in the chat as well. So thank you. But there was a question also if you had a chance to discuss it with a couple of private sector companies to understand if it was like the feasibility of it on their end.
I will say that it was up to the market. Like some of the tool was used, for example, for a team, ACF team in Burkina Faso, and we use some of the criteria that in our term of reference from them. We were talking with the supplier directly. So because the tool need to be adapt, I mean, the criteria need to be selected based on the context. It's more at the country level where we use it, so the conversation with the local supplier with who we're working are relevant, and not like a global approach on the tool. And actually, it's not the suppliers that define our criteria. It's we are the requester, but we need to adapt to the context. So yeah, hope I answer you.
And then there was a whole conversation about, with the initial question being, would there be any plan to also add a supplier database by country? And so Daniel, you started answering this. And Catherine from the REC also highlighted that you could reach out to the local clusters to see if there's some of these lists that exist. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that specific topic.
Yeah, actually, yes, that's part of other project we have for the year. The one being the supplier checklist, so basically adding some ESG criteria to all the supplier's assessment process. Sure, and yeah, Patience, it's a good point again. Sure, the idea would be to like labelize by 2 or 3 or by central organization, maybe some supplier as ESG grade, ESG award. I don't know. We don't want to try to start a label on our own. Basically, the idea is just to share this information of, okay, this guy we assessed in is quite right on this, or this, and yeah, we will work with them. If you want to, you can also try to look at him and see what's going on. It's always tricky. Yes, we don't want to over-assess the suppliers, but on the other part, organizations are not so keen to share all the different suppliers, depending on the context. So it's for project ongoing. It's on the pilot phase for the checklist itself. So we will speak of that probably next year, same place, same time, more or less.
Thank you. We have time maybe for one more question. If someone has a question, you can either put it in the chat or raise your hand, or else we'll just give out a few indications for the end of the session. Okay, so just in the meantime, just to highlight that there's, if you're interested, there are lots of resources done by different actors in the sector on the REH website. You can use the filter, you can go to resources and use the filter sustainable procurement. There are lots of initiatives going on, and I'm sure you're already aware of it. So don't hesitate to have a look there. And in particular, and so you will have the link to the slides as well, the SPCD tool. If you want to email the working group, you have the email there, and I'll put it in the chat as well. So you can reach out if you have any questions or suggestions or feedback that you want to take into account. And also, and we've said it before, and thank you, Catherine, also for sharing. Don't forget to go check out REC's website, where they have lots of resources as well. In particular, a quick guide on environmentally sustainable procurement, which is quite useful as well. I also just want to mention that you will receive the meeting minutes, the slides, and the recording from this session, as well as to all the other REH sessions, in case you were interested, towards the end of the week or beginning next week. So you will have all those informations on hand if needed. And I'll let Céline and Daniel say the last word.
Well, it's 10:59. We're quite punctual. That's a quality. Well done. Thank you everyone for the participation in that. Really appreciate and hope to have some feedbacks or any kind of other news. Please reach out. We're around. Céline?
Yeah, you say everything, Daniel. So thank you very much, and as well, Joanna, for the organization. And I'm happy to be in touch through the contact email.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.